Hello everybody, I'm back with another video. This will be the second part of the third video for uncovering the scripture geography. I had to do it this way, it was just too long, so I broke it in half. When we see Revelation 21:2, and I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, or that word could literally mean newly made Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, made ready for a bride adorned for her husband. Where are we talking about? Is it where we see it today, or is it some other place? We're going to continue to explore that. We're going to look at Jerusalem, and where does John tell us Jerusalem is? Which is not what people are going to realize until they really realize it. But he was it's like the words he gave us tell us exactly where it was. Revelation 6:14, and heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. So we know things moved in Revelation. They were moved from where they were originally and put somewhere else. I think one of the first things we have to think about is where we are actually at. And Jesus told us that. He said unto them, Ye are from beneath, and I am from above. Ye are of this world, and I am not of this world. Okay, the words he used were this word right here, kato, and cosmos. Okay, if you put those two words together, he's specifically telling us that we are from the underworld. This is it. That's in capital coin Greek, but it's the same word, kato, cosmos. And you can see here it means downward, beneath, below, underneath, on the coast, or southward. And I think he meant like the underworld because of the cosmos word. When you put the two together, that's what it would mean. And even though I've got them apart here, it's like he's talking about worlds. He mentions it twice. It's like you got cosmos there and cosmos there. So he's talking about you're in catacosmos, and he's not. He's in the world above. And this is important for us to realize. If we realize this sooner, we might know exactly who the main deity of this entire underworld complex would have been, because it's known to be Pan, or the god of the underworld. Okay, Pan was in ancient Greek religion and mythology is god of the wild, shepherds, flocks, rustic music, and is a companion of the nymphs. He has like hind quarter legs and horns of a goat, and in the same manner he looks like a fawn, and he's known as a satyr. In the Roman religion and myth, Pan was frequently identified with Faunus, a nature god who was the father of Bonadea, sometimes identified as Fauna. He was closely associated with Sylvius, due to their similar relationship with woodlands, and the Innis, a vaguely defined deity that sometimes identified as a Faunus. So we have this creature that looks like a horned, half human, half goat, hairy, sometimes have hooves on their feet, but he plays the pipes also. And we know in Genesis 4:21 the name of his brother was Jubal, and he was the first of all who play the harp and the flute. And we'll see why that's important here later on. But when you see this word right here, this is a pi. It's the same here as it is here. This is just a capital letter, but that word is Pan in Greek. And they say it means everything. There's another word for everything though. And Pan is specifically for this deity right here. In Scripture, the satyrs that are supposed to be part human, part animal, like with the fur and all, are known as he-goats, or satyr. It's H8163. And sometimes they'll just say shaggy for that. They're also known as the devil, the goat, a kid, or rough, or a satyr. Now, when we look at Leviticus 16:5 and 6, you can tell this from there. It's like, from the congregation of the sons of Israel, 2 kids of the goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for the burnt offering. And Aaron shall bring near the bull of the sin offering, which is his own, and shall make atonement for himself and his house. So when you see here of the congregation, this is a satyr or he-goat for a sin offering. So they're part of the sons of Israel. We're going to be looking at Genesis 4:15 through 26, because this is particularly important, because this is, and it says, the son, and a son was also born to Seth, whom he named Enosh. At that time the people began to worship Yahweh, or the Lord. It's like, so this is pretty significant, because this is giving us a timeline of when they started worshiping him. But when we start up here at 15, but the Lord said to him, all right, then, if anyone kills Cain, Cain will be avenged 7 times as much. Then the Lord put a special mark on Cain, so that no one who found him would strike him down. So Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain was intimate with his wife, and she became pregnant, and they gave birth to Enoch. Cain was building a city, and he named the city after Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of Mehujael, was the father of Methuselah, and Methuselah was the father of Lamech. Lamech took 2 wives for himself. The name of the first was Adah, and the name of the second was Zillah. Adah gave birth to Jabal. He was the first of those who live in the tents and keep livestock. The name of the brother was Jubal. So we got Jabal, I'm sorry, I may have mispronounced that, and Jubal. He was the first of all who played the harp and the pan flute, because this is literally a pan flute. Now Zillah also gave birth to Tubal-Cain, who heated metal and shaped all kinds of tools made of bronze and iron. The sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah, and Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, listen to me. You wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have unalived a man for wounding me, a young man for hurting me. Now I'm going to use that word here in case I use this on TikTok, because they don't like that word. If Cain is to be avenged 7 times as much, then Lamech 70 times. And Adam was intimate with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son, and she named him Seth, saying, God has given me another child in the place of Abel, because Cain unalived him. And a son was also born to Seth, whom he named Enosh. At that time, the people began to worship Yahweh. So I think Yahweh is actually Pan. He's a horned deity, and I'm going to show you why. In verse 21, you have the word Yubal, meaning a ram's horn, and Pan literally had horns, and he had the pipes, the pan pipes. You can look over here in, they have the ram's horn here for the biblical meaning. And this is how this is what it looks like. But that V, just like the Latin, changes to a B in English. So that would be a B. This slide is just to show you how many times that this word actually appears in the text. It's like 59 times in Scripture, and it can mean they've got it down as meaning hairy, a he goat, a buck, a sacrificial animal, may refer to a demon-possessed goat, like the swine of Gadara, goat demons, wild goats, plain demons, the devil. I mean, it's been used a lot. And the Saturday is probably why the Sabbath is on Saturday. I mean, sounds exactly the same. And we can see touches of this in all over the place in the actual verses in the Bible. It's like Habakkuk 3:19. Yahweh the Master is my strength. He makes my feet like those of a deer, and he makes me walk on high places, to the chief singers and with my stringed instruments. Luke 13:16. And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abram, whom Satan has bound for 18 years, be loosened from this bond on the Sabbath day, or the Saturday? John 5:16. And this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath day, or the Saturday. Deuteronomy 6:8. And you shall bind them on a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets on your eyes. And we see the same thing in Revelation 24. People would receive a mark on their foreheads and their hands, and I think this mark is literally keeping that Sabbath day or that Saturday that gives you Yahweh's mark. After I made this discovery, so much more of what I was seeing in the artwork, the ancient stuff, like in Pompeii and ancient Rome, was making a lot more sense. Because I told y'all that Pompeii literally has Sodom and Gomorrah carved into the rock of the wall when they unburied it from volcano, and that has been covered up, for over 2,000 years. So it's like, this is old stuff we're talking about. And it says that in Genesis 19:1, the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate at Sodom. And Lot saw them, and he rose to meet them, and bowed himself, his face to the earth. But he pressed them strongly, so they turned aside, and let him enter his house. And he made them a feast, and baked unleavened bread, which is exactly what you would expect with Yahweh. And they called to Lot, where are you men who came to... I'm sorry, I messed that up. And they called to Lot, where are you men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them. And we know that to know them is a sexual connotation. And all your satyrs have like really large penises, and there's a lot of sexual content about them with various people and creatures and male on male, and so that fits that being that area too, because this is artwork from Pompeii that you're looking at, and it's pretty gross, I know, but to show you what it really was, I had to show it to you, This sent my poor mind spinning around in a circle here, because I found something I wasn't expecting to find. You know how in Luke 7:32 we see they are children sitting in the marketplace, calling to one another, we are playing the flute for you, and you did not dance, and we sang the dirge, and you did not weep. For John the Baptist has come eating no bread and drinking no wine, and you say he has a demon. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, look at him, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is justified by all her children. And when I looked at the Greek in this, my heart sank because I got to this word right here. This is the Greek. That little symbol there is a P, A, and an N. And when I threw it in the translator, because they had it down as every, okay, I threw it in the translator and I got pan. Well, being former studying all these world religions, I knew that Pan was the god of the underworld. And I'm like, what in the heck? So when you really look at it, it's like, I think there are two different Jesuses in 1 John 4:2 and then 1 John 4:3. Now this is what they have in their English in the King James. Whereby know ye the Spirit of God, every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. Okay, when I translated, this is what I got. By this you will know that the spirit of the Pan God, this spirit confesses Jesus Christ is appearing in the flesh and is from Theon, okay? And every spirit that does not confess Jesus Lord is not from Theon. This is the spirit that is the Antichrist, which you have heard it was coming and is now in the world. So it's either two different separate deities, or else it's like this one is actually the vice Christ. You know, every spirit that confesses Jesus as Lord is, and from God, is the spirit of the vice Christ, or the ones like Christ, because antitheos in Greek in the first century meant godlike. So antichrist literally means Christ-like. They tell you that it means against. But like if you want to say the name of the president in Greek, the vice president would be anti with the president, president word behind it. It can mean vice, deputy, it can mean like, and it can also mean against. But I think it means like, because I think this has been miscued. And if you watch my Matthew 24 video, I show that, especially when it gets down to what they called the followers of the fake followers of Christ. You can see that in that section, because I break it down. But this shocked me. This really shocked me. I mean, it makes sense, and it makes sense with where all this happened, and it makes sense with what Jesus said, because he said, I come in my Father's name, and when another comes in his own name, you'll receive him. So what they did, instead of receiving Jesus Bar Abba, they received this Pan God Spirit, Jesus Christ. And I cover that very well in that Matthew 24 video. So if you haven't seen it, make sure you watch it, because I don't want you to think that Jesus was a fake and was just some pagan God, because he wasn't. He was the only real God that ever walked this earth. And if you throw him out with all this, then you're throwing out the only thing you got. You're gonna be hating me, even though I'm telling the truth, and I think it's the truth from Father, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It's like the name Pantheon is from the ancient Greek word pantheon. Okay, Pan was a deity back then, and Theon meant God. Now, when you look at the manuscripts, I didn't put one in here, but if you go look at a Koine Greek manuscript from 1st century or 2nd or whatever, you're not going to see a space between words. You're not going to see any punctuation. It's just like one complete run-on alphabet. And it's like, those little books you can buy in the supermarket, and they're like, find a word. That's what it looks like. Like you need to circle out the word so you can figure it out. And now if you read Koine Greek, it gets easier and easier to see those words. But to begin with, it's like a maze to pull stuff out. And I think that this was actually two words and they put it together because there's no break between words when you're writing in Greek, and it's all in capital letters. So if you want to tackle Greek, which I advise that you do, especially if you want to know the truth, I say take Greek, but take it and really study it. Don't just take every teacher's word for it, because they're regurgitating the same garbage. They're not really looking at the etymology. They're not looking at the old usage. They're not looking at the modern usage and how it changed and morphed. There's a lot to learn there. But I think that this literally, the Pantheon is literally the Pan God. So the building they have named the Pantheon is for this deity right here. And we got some problems in Genesis too, because Jacob and Esau had to be monozygotic twins. They would have had to share the same amniotic sac for him to have been able to grab a hold of him. You know, and there's some changes they did in the, this is the Hebrew, and this is the Greek. They made some really weird things, like they put that his brother was hairy. Well, when you look at this word, it's the word for satyr. He wasn't hairy, he was a satyr. That's the exact word used. Now, let's see up here. Where did they put it? I did this and now I can't find it. Hairy. Yeah, they put it down as hairy, and they used a different word in Greek. But supposedly this is the original. I don't know. But if this is correct, then it literally reads, and Jacob, he said to Rebekah, his mother, both my brother is a satyr man, Esau, and myself, I am a divided man. Because this word right here means divided or part. So he was saying, I'm part satyr, and he's satyr. But if they were monozygotic twins, they would have been both satyrs. And we're not told that. That's why I say that. Is like, it would be impossible for them not to be, if they were dizygotic twins, it would be impossible for one of them to be holding onto the other one. But when they're in one egg, which splits into two, then they share the same placenta, the same amniotic sac, and are the same sex, and they'll look identical, although they may have different birth weights. But it would be like, Yahweh told them that there were two nations in her womb. Two separate people shall issue from your body. One people will be mightier than the other, and the older one shall serve the younger one. Okay, and then when her time came to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. And the first one emerged red, and he was a satyr, not hairy, all over. And they named him Esau. And his brother emerged holding on to the heel of Esau, and they named him Jacob. And it goes on to say that he was smooth skinned, but he wasn't. He was divided. He was half smooth and half hairy, like the picture, the one I showed you. So it's literally telling us he was half and half. Now, Strong's Concordance says right here that it's a devil, but it gives a definition of hairy. And then it goes on, and they give you like hairy, a male goat. They don't even, a kid, they don't even tell you it's a he goat many times. A hairy one. And they say some of these words are obsolete. A he goat, the buck of a goat, They call it all different kinds of things. It's crazy. But like I said, this is what I got. And Jacob said to her, Rebekah's mother, both my brother, the satyr, named he man Esau, and myself a divided man. He was like half and half. But I wanted y'all to see that they're not just making this up. They actually literally have devil for that. I like to back things up with proof. Okay, here's the word for divided. Okay, you put it in Milon. That's a Hebrew dictionary, a very one that's really, supposed to be a good one, a good one. And it's like, it says part, portion, fraction, share, section, segment, slice, portion, or quantum. Now, it can mean smooth, glossy, slippery, but or hairless, according to an adjective, but it primarily means part, fraction, and I think it meant partly. Because when you come down here, it's like to divide, distribute, or partition, to be divided, distributed, or different, and to be made smooth, or to fail to slip, to slide. And see, that would be more like slick. He was slick, and it's not spelled the same, okay? But when you come up here, the part, portion, or fraction is spelled identical. And this is the masculine noun satyr, which denotes a he-goat, a bristly guy, they say. And other occasions in the Bible of Brown Driver Briggs Theological Dictionary have chosen to translate this noun with demon or satyr in 4 occasions on Leviticus, Chronicles, Isaiah. They do in those occasions, but then they don't in this particular one. So it could have even been translated as demon or satyr. I would have just put it as satyr, just what it meant. The hairy one mentioned in Greek mythology is a creature composed of a man and a goat, supposedly to inhabit the wild and desolate regions. The Hebrew word is also goat and devil, an idol in the form of a goat, and it is said in Isaiah, the satyrs will dance there. The meaning is that the place referred to shall become a desolate waste. Some render the Hebrew word baboon. And this is from Wiki. Satyr literally means he-goat or hairy one. Arabic, hairy. King James Version has devils, he-goats. Revised Version, margin satyrs. Septuagint has vain things. Let's see. English Revised Standard Version has satyrs, he-goats. The American Standard Version has wild goats or demons in the Septuagint. Let's see. I think, and most of them wild goat, he-goat, all the different versions. Like in Isaiah 54, for your husband is your maker, whose name is Yahweh Sabaoth, and your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. He is called the God of all the earth. Of the earth. I see that a lot in the Old Testament. It's like everything in the earth belongs to Yahweh. And the satyrs and the nymphs hang together. This is from Pompeii. This is another reason I think that region is the most correct one when you read the Old Testament. There are tons of satyrs and nymphs in Pompeii and in Rome. I split this is the best part, probably because I've been sick and I'm trying to do all this not feeling well, but it's like, so I went ahead and repeated a little of this that I mentioned last time on the end of the last video, in case somebody's watching this one, and they haven't watched the other one. But this Pantheon in Rome, I believe it's the Pan God building, because Pan means Pan, and Theon means God. And this obelisk-looking thing out front, I believe, is Rachel's burial marker for the Eternal City. This also greatly disturbed me when I was reading the New Testament. It's like in Mark, he said, and he said to her, let the children be satisfied first, for it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. And she answered, yes, Lord, but even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And then 2 Peter 2:22, this is from Isaiah, he's quoting. They illustrate this true proverb, a dog returns to his own vomit, and a sow after washing herself wallows in the mire. It was kind of a derogatory term for Romans, I believe, because they called the Romans the dogs because of the history of the Romans were associated with wolves in several ways. The legend of Romulus and Remus in Roman mythology, the twins. Romulus and Remus were abandoned in the wild and nursed by a she-wolf in a cave. And the leprechaun, the she-wolf was the sacred animal of Mars, the god of war, and the twins divide their heritage passed on to them to the Romans. The image of the she-wolf suckling of the twins has been a symbol of Rome ever since ancient times. And this is the Romulus Remus statue in Rome. In like Ecclesiastes says, but whoever among the living has hope, a live dog is better than a dead lion. So there's things about it in the Old Testament too. Isaiah 66:3, the one who slaughters a bull also strikes down a man. The one who sacrifices a lamb also breaks a dog's neck. And the one who presents the offering, including pig's blood, with it, the one who offers incense also praises the idol. They have decided to behave this way. They enjoy these disgusting practices, is what they say in Isaiah. But I think that's why they mentioned the dogs, and I think this was not Bar Abba that said this. I would say this was the Christ one that did that. So why do I correlate this with Rachel? Okay, you know in Genesis 35:20, and Jacob set a pillar of mastaba upon her grave, and that pillar, the mastaba of Rachel's grave, is there to this day. So that's telling us it's not going to go away. Okay, well, a mastaba means the house of eternity or eternal house, and I believe this is probably where Rome got the name the Eternal City, because it's where Rachel was buried, and this is the like the marketplace for the satyrs, which Esau and Jacob are both satyrs, and this is the Pan God's building, the Pantheon. So I believe all this fits together, and y'all can take that for what it's worth, research it out, but I really think that that's probably the truth of the matter. They say this came from the Egyptians, from Egyptian-type tombs, the obelisk thing. But this has been one of the most protected buildings in Rome, is this Pantheon. The thing we're going to discuss is John 5. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there was in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Arabic called Besada, or flowing water, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed people. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, do you want to be healed? The sick man answered, sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water stirred up, and while I'm going, another steps down before me. And Jesus said to him, get up and take your bed and walk. And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and he walked. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, it's the Sabbath, and it's not lawful for you to take up your bed. But he answered them, the man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" So Jesus did not go with their laws at all. He healed, which he called works in John. It's the works of his Father, he said. And he told the man to pick up his bed and walk with it. Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn. As there was a crowd in the place, he did not tell him who it was, I guess. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus that had healed him. And this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." It's like, so Yahweh could not have been Jesus' father, because Yahweh rested on the Sabbath. But Jesus did all his works, and everybody says, well, works aren't healing isn't work, but Jesus called them works several times in the book of John. Revelation 16:10. And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and the kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed or devoured their tongues for pain. This word for tongues is language, glossa, like your glossary. It's the language or dialect used by a particular people, district, from that of other nations. It's what divides us with the language, like the Tower of Babel was divided. And so what they're saying is they chewed up or devoured, changed, or whatever you want to call it, the language. And I believe that too. We also have signs of that in Acts 2 and 3. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as a rushing mighty wind. It filled the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. This is what a cloven tongue is. Only serpents have the cloven tongue, where it's split like that, because it means to separate into part or to cut into pieces. Divide, a divided tongue. Genesis 11:9. And therefore is the name called Babel, because of the Lord. There he did confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. Luke 16:24. And he cried and said, Abba, Father Abba, have mercy on me. And Abba meant exalted Father, so that probably should have read, and he cried and said, Father, exalted Father, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus. And Lazarus means the one that God helps, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in torment in this flame. So why are we seeing tongues like fire, and then we're seeing a verse like that about cooling the tongue? I don't think these tongues like fire that are split like a serpent were from Father. Because there's another passage where Jesus said that he breathed the Holy Spirit on them. Then why were they waiting in the upper rooms for the Spirit to come on them to give them tongues like fire that have a divided serpent tongue? What they did was mix up the languages, okay? Like when we look at the sheep gate in John 5:2, in Greek it is pro-Vaticanos, okay? In Latin, it's Vaticanos, okay? Well, Vatica is the Vatican. And it's like the pro means in front of. So it would be in front of the Vatican. And that's using two different languages, I'd still get the same definition. And this is Vatica, and she was there, in the 1st century in Rome, right by a healing temple. And it's also the same name we have for the text of the Codex Vatican. I give you, this is like a copy of the front page here. But she's the goddess of the underworld, an Etruscan goddess of the Batica, or the underworld, who kept the necropolis of the city where the dead are kept. And underneath the Vatican is the necropolis, where it was built on top of that. And that's where John is saying he was. He was in front of this place. So John has given us a specific place that we can pin down as to where Jerusalem is. I did a screenshot of this so nobody can say I'm not telling the truth. There it is, Vaticano. Vaticano is Latin Spanish for Vatican. See down here? Proper noun for Vatican. Vatican City. Vatican. That is the word that John used in Greek. This is how they gnawed the tongue up. This is a Latin Spanish-based word, and they took and used it because the B sounds like a V. That's where you get the Vaticanos, or Vaticano. And that would have been in Rome, not the Middle East. When we go look at the word Vatican, it said that it's learned borrowing from the Latin Vaticanus, or Vatican Hill, in its connection to the Vaticano, to prophesy or an oracle. So it was the city of the prophets. Here I'm showing you here side by side, so you can see. It means Vatican. And yes, it was there in the 1st century. And it says down here, pertaining to sheep, the sheep gate. So maybe that's what the word means. Who knows? But I do know it was the word for the Vaticanos. And it's the same as Probatica in Latin, which means in front of the Vaticanos also. What happens to be right in the Tiber River, right in front of the Vatican area? This island right here, Tiber Island, is the center of the river between Transverse and the ancient city center. It was the site of an ancient forge, which was later made into a bridge. The forge where one could cross the river Tiber into central Italy. And what's next to it? Palatine Hill? Oh goodness, Palestine? Same thing. This is the oldest area in Rome, is the Palatine Hill. The traditional version of Roman history, which has come down principally from Evie and Plutarch, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Tiber Island is the location of an ancient temple to Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine and healing. So this was a healing place. And Basada means running water. You had running water all the way around. And in the center, I'm going to show you, it was the pool where you had to go down. He said he wanted to go down to the pool. He had nobody to get him down there. And you can see why when you see what the pool looked like. And this is Asclepius, the god of medicine, healing, rejuvenation, and physicians. He had a staff with a snake spun around it. Looks a lot like Moses. And Behovis was portrayed as a young man holding a bunch of arrows and lightning bolts, or a plume in his hand, was accompanied by a goat. Believe it or not. Romans believed that Behovis was one of the first gods to be born. He was the god of healing, and he became associated with the Greek god Asclepius. He was the most worshipped in Rome. Let's see. He's associated also with Apollo and Jupiter. And Jupiter, we know, it was pronounced Yahweh or Yehovah. in Latin. Let's see. Eos was an ill-omened counterpart to Jupiter, compared to Semiramis. Latin words such as Basilius, insane, and others interpret Jehovah as anti-Jove, or anti-Yahweh, or like Yahweh, like God, anti-Theos, anti-Christ, like Christ. It is interpreted the same way. I told you. It's like he's like Jupiter. It's crazy, man. So much stuff. And when you read, this is about the Roman wonder, the Porticus Octavia, which is right across, like when you're facing out toward the Colosseum from the island, right across there is this Portica Octavius. It stands at the heart of Rome. That is actually the Roman Jewish grotto also, and it overlooks a plaza called, what is that word? Jerusalem? Wow. The porch was built on the ruins of earlier Porticus of Metro, a chief of the army who had conquered the Macedonia region in Greece. The Porticus of Metro was an enclosed temple of Juno, which I showed you in the last video, is the Shanika that they still worship today, and the temple for Jupiter or Yahweh Saturn, and the first marble temple ever built in Rome. Okay, and it's the same word as Jerusalem, except it's spelled with a G. This is the knowing of the language, so that it hides everything. I got some notes for myself on here that I forgot to take off. I'm sorry. But anyway, what I was going to mention is on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we go to the lake or river or to the sea and recite the Teshlich prayers, which were symbolic of casting our sins into the water. The ceremony was held at the sea or running stream. It had to be at a river, running stream, some kind of running water. So that temple makes perfect sense since it sits right in the middle of a basada. A basada is a flowing water. And it has 5 porticus, and I forgot to tell you on the last slide, the porticus is actually like porches, like the columns. It had five openings when you see that 5 porticus colonnades. We have the word columbra here, a place for diving, or a place for a reservoir or citron. It's also in that sentence, okay? When you look at this, columbra means a place for diving, swimming, bathing, a reservoir, a cistern, it can even mean a baptismal font. But here is this is modern day picture of that island, and here is a reconstructed picture. And you'll notice that you have your 5 porches on the back side, and it's shaped like a boat. To me, it's pretty interesting. Like I told you, the Romans and the Jews have the same customs, all the same things. This was Tiberius, the Tiber, representing Tiber as a god, and he has a big thing he's holding there. And this is where it's a cornucopia. That's where we get the cornucopia from. Rivers were critical to mapping, boundary making, and control of territory. They were found at the heart of Rome, and they were in Roman ideas, practices of healing and health, sexuality and leisure. Let's see. The rivers crossed the length of the whole Rome in the 1st century. So it was there in the 1st century. It's not like it's something that's new. Rivers and streams, he writes, and this is Campbell's writing this, all had their resident spirit. Great rivers had corresponding important anthropomorphic deities who led exciting and eventful lives in mythology. This religion of the aura of the rivers enhances the status of the riverine communities. Rivers were ascribed human qualities and emotions and often fathered children. They also healed. The Romans cherished the cleansing force of running water, and this is combined with the recognition of aquatic healing power, especially in thermal springs. The great Cicero pronounced, "As long as a man is at the waters, he is never dead." And the Jews do the mikveh every day too. So they went into the bath just like the Romans. Right at this island also, I told you the Columbra could be like a drain, or cistern or something to control water. And it's like right there to this day is the Colac Maxima on the Tiber River, which was to control the water. So that actually was there in their system too, by that island. There's a picture of the old one. There's the proximity. I mean, there's right there side by side. And it was a healing temple. It had the cistern or the drainage system. Both were in place. It had flowing water, the Posada, the river. Um, it just lines up 100% to me. When I looked up there's a Columba, I found out that it could conduct to a fuller's field. And I thought, what's a fuller's field? So when I looked up a fuller's field, it's a laundry place where clothes are washed, and fabric and stuff, clothing, blankets, all the things that would keep a city running. So I thought, well, is there also a laundry place close to there? And guess what I found? Actually, a fairly new discovery as of June 28th, 2024. An ancient Roman laundry facility was found right near the Vatican City. So it could have been that too, the Columba. But this is what it looked like, and there's one of the this is one from Pompeii, and this is the one they found here. But the fullers of the ancient Rome were launderers, where they washed clothes in the city and also furnished a processing fabric, later made clothing into blankets and necessary items. They were looked down upon for their use of human and animal urine as a detergent, but were among the most successful and highly paid workers in the city. So there was a fuller there too, if the Columba meant a fuller. This island historically has its legends all the way back to the origins of the Tiber River Island, date back to the 6th century BC. That's way back. The 7th kings of Rome, Tarchus of the Superb, was an excellent form from the city. To celebrate the end of a tyranny, the Romans seized the fallen king's grain reserves and threw them in the Tiber. Over time, the masses of sheaves accumulated, mud and other debris becoming an island. So that's where they think the island originated from. And it was linked to medicine and healing, and dating back to 293 BC, when a terrible epidemic struck the city. To eradicate this scourge, the oracles advised that the ship be sent to Ephraites site, one of the most important temples, to the temple of Asclepius, to retrieve a statue of the deity and bring it back to Rome. Upon arrival at Ephraites, the Roman delegates encountered a huge snake, symbolizing the Asclepius, which boarded their ship. They thus decided to take it back to Rome, and they sailed up the Tiber. The divine serpent slithered off the ship and settled on the Tiber Island, resulting in the construct of the temple for him, and the epic disappeared from the city soon after, so they assumed it was the Asclepius and the snake that did it, and that's why it became a healing temple. It held special significance for all of Rome's sick and ailing who hoped to miraculously be healed by the god Asclepius. Roman nobles even began to abandon their sick slaves on the island as to not have to pay for their food and medical treatment. To put an end to the custom, the Emperor Claudius ruled that any slave who was healed on the island would automatically gain their freedom. That's probably why it was so hard for that guy to get down to the actual water, because this is the little narrow area, and if there are a whole bunch of people wanting to be healed, and it's a well, so it had flowing water, and it was marble, but that's the actual well inside the temple, and so you can see why he was having trouble getting anybody to take him down there to get in the water. This is just some more pictures of the inside so you can see what it looked like. Pretty interesting. I like pictures. I like looking at the old stuff. It'd be nice to go visit the real Holy Land, wouldn't it? And the temple inside had these eagles at the top of the columns that held up the flooring of the temple, because the well was down in the basement. Now I guess that's why he said he had to go down to the water. You know, that's a symbol for Yahweh too, is the eagle. He has a lot of things about eagles. Another legend says that they threw this Tarquinius Surbus in 510 BC. After he fell, he was a hated tyrant, and the angry Romans threw him with his body into the Tiber, and his body settled at the bottom where the dirt and silt accumulated around it, eventually forming the island. That's another theory. Also, on one of the bridges is a carving of a Cipitus rod. It looks just like Moses' thing right there. And Jehovah's was another name he went by, trusting name, and it is like Jehovah or like Yahweh in the way they spelled it out. And he was portrayed as a young man holding a branch of arrows. I told you that. Let's see. And it was right. He was worshipped mostly in Rome and Bolivia and Latium and on the Capitol Hill and on the Tiber Island. Temples were erected to his honor. He's identified with Apollo and Jupiter. And you know, there's one verse that says Barnabas they called Apollo. You know. Let's see. His counterpart is Jupiter. See, it doesn't mean against him. Another article I found that proves that too, because he was considered little Jupiter or anti-Jupiter, so it can also mean little. They know this stuff. They just did this on purpose. And he was more obscure. Jupiter or Yahweh was the main one, but this one was also there. And they had special festivals, and there was a cult to him. It dated back to the earliest Roman history. The cult was introduced into Rome by Sabine King Titus. Other scholars suggest a relation to the Etruscan deity Behev, which is supported by the reference to Behovus in the Etruscan divination formula preserved by Martus Capanella, which places him among the gods of thunder and lightning. And Yahweh's also predicted, is described as thunder and lightning, being wrapped in thunder and lightning. We have the words in the Old Testament. Yahweh is a man, he's a man of war. Well, Jehovah was also invoked during times of war. One such invocation is preserved in Maccabeus' 5th century CE Saturnalia, where the dictators and generals devote the enemy cities and armies to destruction. This invocation clearly draws upon Jehovah's destructive aspect. Father Dias is also Jehovah's means, or by whatever name you want to call him. See, Father Dias, or Jehovah's, same thing. It's all a twisting of the language, and that's by Levy. Every bit of it is a twisting of the tongue. And it also he had a coin too, a denarius. And let's see, Finney the Elder describes the preservation of a wooden statue of Jehovah's, which had been constructed along with the temple in 192 BC, because that was right prior to the time of Jesus. The remains of the marble statue depicting the youthful body with long flowing hair and missing the head, and it was recovered from the temple of Jehovah's in the Rome's Capitoline Hill. Additionally, some scholars interpret a series of 1st century BCE denarius coins as representing Jehovah's, while others reject this identification, instead identifying the deity depicted as Apollo. I'm not sure on that, but there were denarii they think was for him. There were 2 temples dedicated to Jehovah's in Rome, one between the 2 summits of Capitol Hill and another on Tiber Island. The construction of the temple of Tiber Island was vowed by Praetor Purpoli. As noted above, the second temple was vowed by him during the later consulship. The work done to the Capitoline temple may have been a restoration of the earlier structure. So they think it was like a second temple also, just like the one in Jerusalem. More and more suspicious. The Capitoline Temple was restored by Emperor Domitian in the late 1st century CE, was excavated in 1939. It was unique construction as to fit into limited space available in the area. Inscribed altar dedication to Jehovah's by the Gens, Lula, the family of Julius Caesar, and Emperor Augusta, was found at Bovanes, dedicated according to the Alban law, yet another term of obscure meaning. Gee, I wonder why. Why all the obscureness? Here's another statue of him. This card I just made for y'all to have in case you want proof. I've covered it in the last video. It's about the B and the V sound, that Vaticanos is actually Vaticanos, and pro in Greek is in front of. So this was definitely in front of the Vaticanos. I blew this up because I thought this would make everything make a lot more sense here. See, there's the Vaticanus. Here's the temple. Here's the island. And there's the little building, the main building. See the 5 porticos? And Posada, the running water. It just fits. Later on, this thing was turned into a hospital. And this is what it looks like today. I just thought y'all would want to see a picture from today. But it does look like a ship, doesn't it? Pretty interesting. And after I found that other map, I found this map, and I'm going to show you a blow up here in a minute. And I put the word porticus so you could know it was a covered walk between colonnades, porch type thing. And if you said it had five of the openings. So it matches identical. But I'm going to show you a larger blow up of this too. This map shows where the Plaza Jerusalem is, right here. And there's the island where that temple would have been. This is a modern map. I just wanted to have you some maps so you could kind of get bearings on what this is. You can see here, this goes down to Capitol here. And there's the Colosseum right here. This is how it would have kind of stacked up here. All of it in one place, okay? I superimposed this map on top of this map so you could see where the Jewish grotto was. I don't know if it was there in 1st century. I can't say for sure, but it probably was. Vatican Hill would have been here, the temple here, the plaza here, the temple to Yahweh there, and the Jewish grotto right there. And you can see the proximity to the temple Jupiter. Two of these maps. This is from the 16th century one, and this would have been because the prominent thing in the whole city of Rome at that 1st century would have been the temple of Yahweh or Jehovah, and it was right there across the bridge. There's the island, and this they have is the Vatican right here. So they show it more as being all the way across. And the forge was here, and then they built the bridges, and it went right down Sacred Way to the main temple. And that's where you also see your Arch of Titus carrying the menorah and all that stuff. I'm going to talk about that too. Other map was made from this one. This one's 1592, and this is a black and white. So I used this one to put some names on here so you could see where they had been located. And we know in Psalms 82:1, this is from the Tanakh, God standeth in the congregation of the gods in the midst of he judges. It's like, so he was right in the middle of everything, the main temple. And then would have been like the Probatica, the temple in front of the Vatican, and then the Posada, the flowing water, and then we have the Plaza Jerusalem. I just think this is a location. Y'all can do more further studies into it. If you find anything, let me know. Okay, this is they just recreated everything in the Middle East, I think, because this is the map of the Middle East, and I turned it the same direction so you could see the proximity. This would have been Yahweh's temple, and this is the sheep gate, or the healing thing. And we've got water running through there too. It's like, it's just so similar, it's unreal. But I just put the two maps together so you could see how closely it resembles if you just spin it just a hair. I think they tried to recreate the same thing with the Vatican, because you got 5 porticos, 5 major openings with 5 doors, and then they put the fountains out there, which were symbolic of the healing fountain, or the water healing. So I think they recreated like a sheep gate thing at the Vatican. We talked about this one before, and I'm going to go back over this again. Matthew 27:3. Then when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. They said, What is that to us? See to it yourself.
And throwing down the pieces of silver into the temple, he departed, and he went and hanged himself. But the chief priest, taking the pieces of silver, said, "It's not lawful to put them into the treasury, since it is blood money." So he took counsel and bought with them the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. So they took counsel and they bought this field, and it's called Potter's Field. Okay, Potter's Field is in Rome, people. In Rome, the Potter's Field was on the side of a hill. According to the website on ancient Rome, a large pit graves contained the friendless poor, plague-infected bodies, dead animals, roadkill, abandoned slaves, area victims, criminal outcasts, and unidentified bodies. The stench was so unbearable, and the site became a source of disease. The Roman Emperor Augustus Caesar designated a new potter's field and buried the original one under 25 feet of soil. He renamed it Horta Mencetis, the Garden of Mencetus. And you can see it here on the map, the ancient map. And it's in Rome, it's not in the Middle East. I mean, there's just so much proof that this is where this happened. This is an actual screenshot right here of the website where I found that. And it talks about Pottersville eventually became really bad, and there were open pits to give away to unbearable stench and provided disease-breeding pollution. Augustus created a new dumping ground elsewhere and buried Pottersfield under 25 feet of soil. The field was renamed Horta Mentis, or the Garden of Messias. The equine was also a place for executing criminals of authorities, and the decrease would then be the birds of the prey would come near the gate there too, and that was another reason. But it gives this, it was a pauper class type of burial place. Friendless poor, the plague-infected bodies, dead animals, fields, scrapings of the road, abandoned staves, area victims, criminal outcasts, and unidentified dead. And here we see this garden that's been renamed on this ancient map, showing exactly where it was. So I hope this helps you see it. As we can see, all the evidence and all the roads lead to Rome. Now I will, on the next video, hopefully get this out to y'all soon, about Vespasian, and how Vespasian was actually Jewish, and how he built the Temple of Peace, which is basically Jerusalem means teaching peace or peace, and how the Sacred Way, we'll talk again about the Arch of Titus and all that, and how that's actually a procession arch on the Sacred Way to the temple, how they had arcs. I got a lot of stuff in the next one too, so I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that it helps people see the truth. And I love you guys.